All right, thank you. So I'll just start out by introducing our guest speakers today. We have Stephanie Dixon with us. Stephanie is a passionate social justice lawyer who advocates for the rights of people with disabilities. She has years of experience working on disability and poverty-related legal issues. Stephanie joined Poor & Law in August 2019 and leads their legal services in Southwestern Ontario. We also have Frankie James. Frankie is a Canadian activist, artist, and author focused on the environment, human rights, and free expression. Her newest book, Freeing Teresa, tells the story of how Frankie and her husband, Bill, helped her sister Teresa get out of a nursing home, regain her decision-making rights, and get an official apology from the government of Ontario. Frankie's joined by her sister, Teresa Hartchild, who's an artist, poet, and self-advocate, who has bravely shared her story with the world. And she's also joined by her husband, William James, who's an artist, musical storyteller, and activist. Frankie, Teresa, and Bill lived for many years in Ontario, and the story they're going to be telling you today took place in Ontario, and they currently live in Vancouver. I also want to thank Eon and also Tenzin Kondo for tech support for today's webinar. So just before I turn it over to Frankie, I just want to tell everyone that this week, Community Living Ontario is launching a series of documents on the topic of choice, control, and decision-making. These documents take a close look at Ontario's progress or lack thereof in supporting people labeled with intellectual disability to have control over their lives and to have their decisions honored and respected. This series shines a spotlight in particular on the barriers people face in exercising legal capacity. Now, when I use the term legal capacity, I'm referring to people's right to be recognized as persons before the law, to exercise their rights, to access the civil and judicial system, to enter into contracts, to make decisions about their own life and property, and to speak on their own behalf. Now, I'm sure there are many people in this webinar who have experienced situations where a person labeled with intellectual disability has been prevented from doing these things. And this is why I'm so pleased that Frankie, Teresa, and Bill are here to share their own experience in Ontario, and also that Stephanie is going to follow with information that can help family members, supporters, support agencies, and people themselves to protect their rights and increase control over their own lives. So I'll also paste the link to this series in the chat a little bit later on in the webinar. So I'm just going to, so Frankie, while I'm queuing up the video, do you want to introduce it to folks before I show it? Oh, you're muted.
Are we showing the Exploding the Myth?
Yes.
Great, great.
You want to introduce
And
it?
so thank you very much for having me today. I'm so thrilled to be here and able to tell you this story. It's taken me 10 years to be able to tell it, and you'll see why when we go through the story. And the story starts with Exploding the Myth, which was actually a production of Community Living Ontario in 1979. And Teresa, who's in the background here, was starring, one of the stars of the show. So I'll let Sean take over.
But Teresa's parents ignored the experts and they kept her at home. They decided they would make the effort to give Teresa every possible chance. It was a tough decision, but obviously it's paid off.
When Teresa was born, we had quite a number of questions. Didn't like the answers. When we took Teresa back from the hospital, Patricia said that it was, as far as she was concerned, Teresa would learn to read and write, and that she would have the coordination.
We had had a lot of experience with small children before, and we went right ahead. And anything I had done for the other children, I said, we will do it for Teresa. Well, we have found when dealing with all our children that from early childhood, we've had expectations and ambitions for them. And very fortunately, each and every one of them has been able to achieve and to fulfill their ambitions. Now, we expect that Teresa too has ambitions and expectations, and she has definite things that she wants to do.
Oh, you're muted, Frankie.
Introduction. Thank you very much. It's so nice to see my parents so long ago on screen, and they were real champions for inclusion at a time in the 1960s when there was sort of a groundswell towards the deinstitutionalization movement. However, there were still 4,000 people on the list for I think for Huronia, I think. So there was kind of a battle between the institutionalization and the deinstitutionalization. So can I get started on the slides now? Yeah. Great. Okay, great. And we'll go to the next one. So my sister Teresa was 49 in 2013, and she has Down syndrome. And you'll see that these slides are a combination of slides that I've created just now, as I've written this book, Freeing Teresa, and slides from 2014 when I presented to the Ontario government. And this is one of the slides that I presented. And so I'm telling the story of how Teresa lived. She lived with my parents all her life. And after my mother died in '99, she moved with my father to a condo in North Toronto, and she was very happy. They were really a team together. Oops. Go forward. Yes. Okay. So Dad and Teresa were going out and doing grocery shopping and other errands, and they were also getting some support workers in. They were very happy living together, and thought that they had a lot of runway still.
Okay.
But my sister complained of feeling burnt out, and all of my siblings, except for Teresa, wanted Dad in a nursing home, a veterans nursing home. And these are pseudonyms that I'm using, which are in my book. Phoebe and Conrad both said it would be a fitting reward for Dad's years of service to be in a nursing home. And I asked my father when he came over to dinner, what do you think of going into this veterans nursing home? And Dad said, why is it that I get to a certain age and they decide to put me into one of those damned homes? I don't want that. I want to stay with Teresa where we are. And we frequently had my dad and Teresa over to dinner and really enjoyed so many wonderful dinners. And my feeling was that I know many families who have chosen to keep their aging parents at home, even those with dementia, until the very end. And why couldn't we? And really, it bothered me that we were not being inclusive and doing all that we could to see Dad stay in his condo. But the big question is, where would Teresa live if Dad went to a nursing home, which was my siblings' plan? My brother Conrad, and again, these are pseudonyms, had promised to take Teresa, but now said for his own reasons that she had to live in a nursing home too, just like Dad, but a different nursing home. And he said, taking Teresa would be unfair to both my wife and me, and even to Teresa herself. She deserves to live out the rest of her life with some degree of supervised independence. And this is where we have a difference of opinion, because I don't think of nursing homes as supervised independence at all. I really became concerned when Teresa's whiteboard, photos of her whiteboard started circulating, as one of my sisters, Deirdre, sent out pictures of Teresa's whiteboard. She didn't say anything, but she sent a number of them. And I immediately wondered why she was saying it, and I defended Teresa's right to self-expression and to free expression. And my sister-in-law said that it was a fanatical obsession. And this sort of email episode just raised alarm bells with me, because this is beautiful, writing and drawing on her whiteboard, and it was in her own bedroom. It wasn't bothering anybody. But my siblings didn't like it and felt that it was somehow unhealthy and should not be encouraged. And we were frequently taking Teresa out to Terry Fox and various sporting events that she could be actively, exercising. And the See the Ability campaign by the Canadian Down Syndrome Society really sparked us to bring forward the idea that we should see the ability in Teresa. And I proposed a vision session to imagine Teresa's best possible future. And the vision session would be, what is her best possible future? What are the hurdles, and what is an action plan? But no one else, unfortunately, could imagine a better future. My brother-in-law said, put Dad in the veterans wing, put Teresa in a nursing home, and take me off your mailing list. It was very disheartening. And I realized that I was going to have to step forward in order to help Teresa. And when the idea of a nursing home was floated around, I was sharing lots of news articles at the time and saying, they're overcrowded, underfunded, and understaffed, and also that there are reports of people getting bullied and sexually abused. So I brought this up with my brother, Conrad, and on the phone, he says, we have to be an active part of her life. And then the nursing home that we went to, the people were so bloody old, no one could abuse Teresa. They couldn't catch her. And I think he was saying this as a joke, but I didn't like it. And this, again, really got me concerned. So I've got a few gaps here, but I was speaking with my sister, Deirdre, and she said that I had no power to help to stop Teresa from going into a nursing home, and that I wasn't a substitute decision maker, so I should just step out of the way. And when I got off the phone, I was racing downstairs, talking and swearing to myself. At that moment, I knew they're really going to do it. And I said to Bill, and he says, do what? Put Teresa in a nursing home. And the story just came rushing out. And we decided at that moment, that evening, that the only way to save Teresa from going into a nursing home was for Bill and I to take Teresa. So I put forward an offer in writing that night. And we decided it was, I thought that this would solve it, and Teresa would not be put in a nursing home.
I think I'll just say something there. The other reason that people wanted to put Teresa into a nursing home was because there's no group home spots available. And they had this idea that there was a crisis list for nursing home placement. So they couldn't get Teresa into a group home, but a nursing home placement was based on need. And if Teresa was suddenly abandoned from her father, then she would jump to the top of the queue to get into a nursing home. And so the idea is that if Frankie and Bill offer to take Teresa, then she won't be able to go on the creasing list, and they can wait until she gets a proper space. But this is when Frankie realized they're really going to do it, and she jumped ahead.
Thanks, Bill. You can see why he's my partner. We're going forward. Okay, so on November 27th, within just a few days of me putting forward my offer in writing, Teresa was put into a nursing home. And I got the news via an email from my brother, and he said that they'd taken Teresa out for a nice breakfast, picked her up at my father's condo, taken her out for a nice breakfast, and checked her into the nursing home. And I was just devastated. I couldn't believe it. And my father was devastated too. So, and Teresa was in shock and crying. And this is one of the slides from 2014. And I said to the committee, Teresa is an active, strong-willed, and able-bodied adult. Why is she being put in a nursing home? Teresa should never have been admitted to a nursing home. There's so many people there who really need the space. And why was she being given one of the valuable beds? The long-term care admission was done against Teresa's wishes and Dad's wishes. How could this happen? The healthcare agencies, the police, and the government did not protect Teresa. And I was telling my siblings that this was against Teresa's human rights. And it didn't seem to make any difference, or it didn't make any difference. Whose voice would you listen to? My father. I do not want Teresa in a nursing home. Teresa, I want to stay in the condo. A sibling. Teresa should be placed in a nursing home. The CCAC, which was the agency that was in charge of Teresa's social services at that time, assessed Teresa as not capable. And this was done, I got these health documents after we had gotten Teresa out, and jumped through a lot of hoops, which you'll see. But the capacity assessment was done in secret at one of my siblings' homes without the knowledge of my father and without Teresa's consent. The CCAC used Teresa's statements about her independence. I shower myself, I dress myself, as evidence of cognitive decline. I mean, this is just shocking. She's speaking up for herself. She's saying, I shower myself, I dress myself. And she was being ignored, and it was being twisted around to she was not telling the truth. The CCAC repeatedly ignored Teresa's wishes. I like the condo. I want to stay in the condo. I like it here. I can play computer and watch TV, none of which she could do in a nursing home.
Right.
The CCAC ignored their own observations about Teresa. The client is a pleasant, calm, and quiet client with Down syndrome who enjoys close relationships with her family members and at her day program. And when I saw this, I just couldn't believe it. Teresa was falsely described as incapable of taking care of herself, which would get her the spot in the long-term care home. They said that she couldn't bathe without physical assistance. She couldn't have personal hygiene without somebody helping her. She couldn't use a toilet without physical assistance. And she couldn't dress her lower body without physical assistance. Now, this is 10 years later. It's not true now, and it wasn't true then. And it was just so gobsmacking to see it written down like this. Unbelievable. Teresa was described on the call report as having insidious cognitive problems and decline. And my feeling at the time was that the descriptions were absolutely false, and that they were being presented to get her that spot in long-term care. Teresa was reported to have wandering events. And so they're creating a picture of Teresa as an Alzheimer type, with Alzheimer's. And she didn't have Alzheimer's then, she doesn't have it now. And my offers to take Teresa were not shared by the substitute decision maker, which would have taken Teresa off of the crisis place and stopped her from being able to get a spot in the long-term care home. So Teresa was admitted as a long-term placement. And without her consent and without my father's knowledge. Now we're skipping forward here, and we've got to the good part. Teresa was discharged on November 30th. So this was 4 days after she was put in. My dad, Bill, and I went down to the nursing home, and we got Teresa discharged. It took hours, and we were meeting with the head nurse and with the director of care and with the CEO. And we were explaining that Teresa was 49. She had Down syndrome. She had no reason to be in a long-term care home, and we wanted to take her home. And the CEO at that time, who I was speaking to on the phone, said, I understand that it may be the wrong placement, and, yes, finally, she agreed that we could take Teresa out, the dad could take Teresa out. So we were thrilled, and we went home to celebrate.
But one of the things about that was that when we went down, as Frankie didn't have the power of attorney for Teresa, she didn't have the legal power. It was the siblings that did that. And they had said that dad didn't have any power either. But when we went down to the long-term care home, we got the hospital paperwork, and dad was listed as the senior power of attorney on their own paperwork. And then we phoned our lawyer, and he said, yes, if dad is this power of attorney, then you can sign her out. And when Frankie talked to the CEO, she said the same thing. If dad is the power of attorney, he can sign her out. And later we learned that, in fact, Teresa herself legally could have signed herself out, because long-term care homes do not have the right of retention like a mental health institution. Nevertheless, it is very, very difficult, despite that they have no legal right to do it. It's very difficult to get someone out of a nursing home. And fortunately, dad had the power of attorney. We signed her out and took her home.
However, the CCAC suggested calling the police to return Teresa. And this was in response to one of my siblings calling and being so upset that we'd gotten Teresa out, and mischaracterizing our several hours of patiently waiting and seeing the documents and all that. And speaking to the CEO, she said that we stormed the long-term care home, which is not true at all. Anyway, the CCAC suggested calling the police to return Teresa. And that night, after we'd gotten Teresa home and we'd celebrated that we had her, my siblings were calling and threatening dad that they would call the police if we did not return Teresa to the hospital. To the long-term care home. And in a real twist, what happened was the police did arrive. However, they weren't there to take Teresa away. They came to take my father away, saying that he was threatening suicide. And Dad denied it, and I denied it that there was any problem like that. And the hospital later released Dad with no concern, but that was the allegation. And it was extremely upsetting.
They did take that.
And they did take Dad to the hospital for the night. So the next day, Teresa moved into my home, and she has lived with us ever since. So it's 11 years now. It's amazing. But just 4 days after Teresa moved in, so she moved in December 1, so December 4th, the police arrived at my front door with a missing person report to take Teresa back to the nursing home. And we spent several hours, and we were on the phone with our lawyer going, oh my God, like, how can they be taking Teresa back to the nursing home? This can't be right. She has a beautiful home here with us. She's got her own bedroom. She's so comfortable. Why are they going to put her back into a nursing home? And we don't know what changed the policeman's mind. There were actually 3 cops that night. And it was really just, it could have gone either way. We were just unbelievably worried that they were going to take Teresa back. And they finally said that Teresa could stay with us after interviewing Teresa herself, who said that she wanted to stay, which was good, that they actually listened to Teresa. And here I am going over the documents with the police officers.
The other thing that might have convinced the police is our lawyer spoke with him for 20 minutes or so, and we were recording the whole thing on video. We were saying, this is a bad thing you're doing. If you take Teresa, this is going to be front page news. Don't do it. But as Frankie said, it was very close. They almost decided to take her, but at the last minute, and maybe it was thanks to our lawyer, they said, no, we'll leave her here.
However, the CCAC refused to release Teresa's medical records, saying that Teresa's capacity was in question. And this is so terrible that the patient themselves can't see their own health records. So we got advice from our lawyer that what we needed to do was to get a new capacity assessment done. And so we did. In December, we hired a new capacity assessor.
11:30.
And Teresa was found to be capable. Teresa met with the capacity assessor on 2 occasions in December and January. And in her letter of opinion dated January 11th, she stated Teresa is capable of granting power of attorney for personal care. So this was just tremendous news. This just was the thing that we needed to empower Teresa to live with us and to really have decision-making authority. And Teresa, here we have a photo of her signing her new power of attorney. We had to hire a separate lawyer, someone different. And here she is holding her health records. So that was January 18th. The capacity assessment document came in on January 11th. This is January 18th. And on January 21st, I presented with Teresa to the Ontario government. Teresa's story was crisis, capacity, and courage. And we wove together photos of Teresa and her health records to tell the story. It was the Ontario Government Select Committee on Developmental Services, and they were hearing complaints from all over the province. And so it was just so appropriate that we were there on January 21st, 2014 to tell Teresa's story, and they were shocked. And but they couldn't do anything other than write their final report. Teresa is thriving. And we had the big blackout in Toronto at that time, and fortunately, we took advantage of it by going to ski country. Consent and capacity law is easily abused. These are the recommendations that I would have after all this. We need to change it. The crisis list is broken. We need to fix it. And Sean has said that the same problems that we were encountering in 2014 are still prevalent in 2024. Disabled and disadvantaged people are getting hurt in Ontario's care system. We need protection. And so one of the interesting things was that as sort of whistleblowers, Bill and I and Teresa, we have moved to BC, and where the laws are very advantageous for Teresa. She can have supported decision-making through the BC representation agreement, and we're enjoying life in BC. And the other thing is that it's very difficult for people who are dependent on the Ontario system to stand up and say, this isn't fair. They're afraid perhaps that their funding will be withdrawn, but as we're in BC, we didn't have to worry about that anymore. And now we're going to see where Teresa is now.
This is the video.
This is the video, and we picked up on the hashtag assume that I can.
And this is the story of all that happened after that. So Teresa launched a petition, and she got an apology from the Minister of Health. So here is the our little assume that I can video.
10 years ago, people assumed my sister's life was over. Hey,
Oh, Frankie, I think you guys need to unmute so we can hear the video. You need to, oh, there you go.
it's over.
Okay, we need what?
Can you
Is it
share
working
sound, please? 10 years ago,
We can now.
my sister's life was over.
Hey, we're gonna take the ball top. Anthony or Anthony next. We haven't seen it. Hey. And then Finn. Hey. The CCAC said, I couldn't decide about it. I hope cares for me. Then they put me into a nursing home. I did not want to be there. That is all. If I ever write to this,
Teresa petition.
25.
The reasons why others are getting put in nursing homes.
That little graphic that you saw at the end was is Teresa's design for a T-shirt on Down Syndrome Day, and it was for Down Syndrome BC. So it was quite an achievement on her part. So we're just going to show you the an audiobook trailer, which the audiobook should be out in the next month or so. So this is just a little teaser.
I think you're a female too good. I want you to sign it. You're not afraid. You're not afraid.
Do I seem like I'm just incredibly stupid? What? Do you realize you've challenged me on my research? You've challenged me on my compassion for Teresa and on my motives? Siobhan, I'm serious about Teresa. This is terrible that you're doing this to me, Siobhan. It will be heartbreaking. This is going to be the most horrible thing to do as a group. But Teresa has the legal right to decide what happens. No, she doesn't. Yes, she does. And why would you think that? You're not afraid of those monsters. Freeing Teresa. A true story about my sister and me. By Frankie James. With Teresa Hartchild and Billiam James. Featuring Jackie Blackmore, Lauren Potter, Paula Hoffman, and a full cast.
So thanks everyone for listening to our story.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Teresa. You know, I've talked to you guys, you know, a few times now about this, and I've read the book, and I still, every time I see the picture of the police in your apartment, I'm just absolutely stunned.
It's
I'm just
scary.
we still have a couple of minutes. I'm just wondering if you can talk a bit about your experience with different people in the community, in hospital, in the long-term care home, and how they like what assumptions, what presumptions do people make about Teresa in their day-to-day lives, and how do you guys manage that?
So you mean back in 2014 or right now?
Either one, like even right now, is it still something that you are managing and dealing with, or has it gone?
The thing that we noticed is that when we lived in Toronto, we lived with a group of people who didn't understand Teresa, really, who didn't appreciate her. And when we came to BC, we immediately gravitated towards environmentalists, because Frankie's an environmental activist, but also to the disability community. And we met all these people that really respected and loved Teresa, and it was great. And we see all these people that are just so supportive. And it was like we were in a new land and everything was fantastic. And it really wasn't the land, it was just the group of people. Like there's people like that everywhere. And I think it's really important to associate with people who believe in your beliefs that you share Teresa.
And the other thing I would say is that it's really incredible how easily Teresa lost her right to decide to live in the community. And this could happen to anyone. And it's important to, you know, as people around the person with an intellectual disability, we can see this happening. And it's so important that we not just shrug our shoulders, but that we actually step forward and say very boldly, you know, that person has the human right to stay in the community. It's protected by the CRPD and the Canadian Charter, and really help them. Everybody needs help to advocate. We have lawyers who helped us to advocate. Teresa was the same thing. She needed lawyers and us to help her to get free of the trap that she was placed in.
Well, I so appreciate you sharing your story. Like you said, it is still relevant today. So thank you again. We may have some time for questions after Stephanie's presentation. It looks like there's some good stuff coming in to you in the chat right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Dixon from Porn Law, who is going to talk about these issues from a more legal.
Stephanie, thank you so much for going through the process, the pros, the cons, the alternatives, the decision-making tree. Love that graphic. So we'll make sure that that's widely disseminated. And to Frankie, Bill, and most especially Teresa for your grace and sharing your story and the importance of listening and valuing the person and their desires, their will and preference, to safeguard people's rights and that will and preference, and how we sometimes as families and certainly as a society make people more vulnerable through our attitudes, our systems, our laws, and our processes, really struck home with me in hearing about your story. We all need allies. I think as Bill said, we all need help. Find your people, find your allies, find those who you can commiserate with, find who are thinking similarly, find your people. And I think you will derive strength. You will get a renewed purpose, because we need, not only do we need persistence, but we need resilience in safeguarding people's rights and their lives. And that doesn't just apply to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but all of us as humans. So really appreciate the story, the perspective, the information and education from you all. It was a great session. Thanks, Sean, for putting it all together, because super relevant. I think you can see by the attendance and by the questions that were asked, and really looking forward to our next one. So if you haven't registered yet, please do. Again, thanks to our panelists. Thanks to all of you for attending, and enjoy the rest of your day.